Have you ever fallen so hard that you genuinely didn't want to get back up? Not metaphorically, but literally, where getting out of bed felt like dragging the weight of the world behind you, where every breath was a negotiation, where you couldn't even imagine a version of yourself that smiled again. Have you ever failed so completely that the thought of trying again made you feel sick? Have you ever made a mistake so costly or lost something so important that you whispered in the dark, "Maybe this is it. Maybe this is where my story ends"? If your answer is yes, then this message is for you, because you are not alone. And more importantly, this is not the end. There are failures so heavy, they make the sunrise feel cruel, like the light itself is mocking you for surviving the night. There are mistakes that echo so loud, you hear them in every quiet moment. Every pause becomes a reminder of what didn't go right. Some people fall and bounce back, but others, they fall and stay there for a while, not because they're weak, but because the fall knocked something out of them. Trust, belief, hope. Have you ever stood in front of the mirror and couldn't recognize the person staring back? Have you ever heard a kind word and felt like it was meant for someone else? If you felt that, then you know what it means to hit the bottom. But here's what most people forget. You don't have to rise all at once. You just have to not give up where you landed. And yet, somehow, there are people who rise, not because they're stronger, not because they're luckier, but because something inside them whispers, "This is not where my story ends." They get back up, slowly, clumsily, quietly. They don't rise to applause. They rise in silence, with no spotlight, no cheering crowd. But they rise anyway. And over time, their scars become symbols. Their past becomes power. Their stumble becomes the first step in a brand new chapter. They are not admired because they never fell. They are honored because they refused to stay down. In the heart of Eastern philosophy, there lived a man whose words still echo across centuries. Confucius. Not a general, not a king, but a thinker, a teacher, a student of life's hardest lessons. He didn't speak to the victorious. He spoke to the fallen, to those who'd failed, to those who'd broken promises, lost their way, made grave mistakes, and still wanted to become better. He didn't promise an easy path. He promised meaning in the pain, growth in the grief, and dignity not from never falling, but from learning how to rise when falling felt inevitable. Because Confucius understood something most people miss. It is not in perfection that we find greatness, but in our ability to return after being broken. Our greatest glory is not in never falling, but in rising every time we fall. This isn't just a quote. It's a lifeline, a truth that cuts through shame, failure, and fear, and gently says, you are not less because you fell. You are more because you stood back up. Perfection is an illusion. We all stumble. We all break. We all lose something we thought we couldn't live without. But rising again and again, choosing to rebuild, choosing to hope, choosing to breathe through the weight, that's where glory lives. Not in avoiding pain, but in refusing to let pain define the end of your story. Glory isn't found in those who never bleed. It's found in those who bandage their wounds and still choose to walk forward. It's not about flawless victories. It's about courageous returns. The world may admire the ones who never falter, but it remembers, truly remembers, the ones who fall hard and rise with even harder hope. Because resurrection is greater than perfection. And rebirth is more powerful than always being strong. So if you've fallen, if you've lost, If you've broken something in your life or in yourself, know this: you are not finished. You are just beginning again stronger. Everyone falls, even the strongest, even the ones who seem unshakable. Some fall quietly. A job lost, a relationship slipping away, a silent battle with something no one sees. Others fall loudly. A bankruptcy, a public mistake, a breakdown that echoes. But the truth is the same. Falling is part of being human. There will be days when you can't move, when you don't recognize your own reflection, when the simplest act like getting out of bed feels impossible. That doesn't mean you're broken beyond repair. It means you're alive. The people you admire most, they've been on the ground too, crying, hurting, questioning everything. What made them different was not that they avoided the fall, but that they refused to let it be their final chapter. Strangely enough, it's often in the fall that we learn who we really are. Falling strips away illusions. It humbles us. It exposes our limits and our potential. When we fall, we discover we're not as invincible as we thought. Sometimes, it takes being brought to our knees to realize how much we've been carrying. Without ever stopping to ask for help, we need to start again from the beginning. And that's okay. There is no shame in relearning, in rebuilding, in picking up the scattered pieces with trembling hands. We are not alone. When we stop pretending to be perfect, when we admit we're struggling, we give others permission to stand with us. The fall teaches us to feel, to slow down, to listen, to ask better questions. And when we rise, we don't rise as the person we were. We rise wiser, softer, more aware, more human. So here's the truth no one teaches us in school. Your bruises are not your shame. They are your proof that you've lived, that you've tried, that something mattered enough to give your whole heart to. Every scar has a lesson. Every fall has a map hidden inside it, if you're willing to look closely. So don't hide your wounds. Don't apologize for them. Don't pretend they never happened. Honor them. Honor the version of you that kept going when you had every reason to give up. And next time you fall, because you will, don't panic. Fall with grace. Fall with awareness. And when you're ready, rise. Not because the world demands it, but because you deserve to see who you become. When you decide that failure is not your final word, sometimes the most powerful lessons don't come from books, quotes, or theories. They come from people, real people, who have been shattered and still chose to rebuild. Sometimes we need to stop hearing about success and start listening to how people survive. They're not about perfection. They're about survival, about glory born from pain, about rising when the world gives you every reason to stay down. Story number 1, the man who lost his whole family. He had everything. A wife he adored. 2 children who ran to the door every evening shouting, "Daddy!" A stable job. A life filled with little joy slaughter, dinner conversations, bedtime stories. Until one rainy afternoon, a truck, a red light, a sound that would echo in his ears for the rest of his life. They were gone. Wife, children, in a flash. He survived barely. Physically, he was paralyzed from the waist down. Emotionally, he was gone. For almost a year, he spoke no words. He refused food. He lay in a hospital bed, staring at the ceiling, waiting for the world to forget him. Then one day, his small dog, who had been brought in by a friend, jumped onto his chest, scratched lightly and started licking away the tears he didn't even realize had fallen. And for the first time, he cried out loud. Not from pain, from something deeper release. That night, something shifted. The next day, he asked to begin physical therapy. He started drawing clumsily with his non-dominant hand, then painting, then creating. Today, he is a painter. He sells art to raise funds for orphan children. He still grieves, always will. But he says, I didn't rise because I stopped hurting. I rose because I didn't want my pain to be the final chapter. Story number 2. The businesswoman who lost everything and gave everything back. She had the dream life. A rising star in the business world. Founder of a startup that made headlines. Media interviews. Applause. Appearances. But one wrong investment. One moment of trust in the wrong person. And everything collapsed. The company. Her savings. Her reputation. Gone. The headlines turned cold. Friends vanished. Whispers followed her wherever she went. She lost her house, her mental health, and one night, her will to keep going. She attempted to end it all, but life had a different plan. She woke up in a psychiatric hospital, groggy, ashamed, defeated. There, she met a girl, 17 years old, abandoned by her family after getting pregnant, alone, afraid, nearly invisible. They started talking every day. 2 broken women, learning how to hold each other's pieces. That girl didn't need advice. She needed presence. And in showing up for someone else, the woman remembered how to show up for herself. When she left the hospital, she didn't rebuild her company. She rebuilt her purpose. She started a nonprofit, supporting women who had lost everything, but still wanted to start again. Today, she's no longer introduced as a CEO. She's introduced as a lifeline. And when someone asks how she survived, she says, "That fall felt like the end of my life. I didn't know it was just a comma, a pause before I began rewriting everything." Story number 3. The orphaned boy who refused to stay down. He lost both parents when he was 10. No warning. No goodbye. Just a car accident. And suddenly, he was alone in the world. Except for his aging grandmother, who lived on barely enough to eat. He stayed in school, but not because he loved it. Because he had nowhere else to go. He sat in the back row. Always the lowest scores. Always the last to finish. Always the first to be forgotten. Teachers gave up. Classmates mocked him. He began to believe what they whispered. "You're not smart enough. You're just a burden." One night, after a particularly harsh exam result, he decided to quit school. Walk away. Disappear into whatever life was willing to offer someone like him. But as he quietly packed his bag, he saw his grandmother at the kitchen table, hands trembling, eyes tired, stitching the sole of an old shoe. It was 2 in the morning, and she was working so he could have books, so he could have a chance. He sat down, and he cried. Then he picked up a textbook, and started again. Every night, every morning. No tutoring, no privilege, just will. 3 years later, he scored the highest exam mark in his entire province. He was accepted into the country's top medical school. And when asked how he did it, he said, "I fell the day I was born, but I never believed I had to stay on the ground." Maybe you've fallen. Maybe you've been down for so long, you've forgotten what standing feels like. Maybe you're not even sure if you want to get up, because the ground feels strangely familiar now. Safe in a painful sort of way. At least here, you don't have to pretend you're okay. And I won't tell you to be strong. I won't say, just get over it. What I will say is this: you're allowed to rest. But you're not meant to stay here forever. There is still more ahead. Not because you owe it to the world, but because you owe it to yourself. You've already survived so much. What if just maybe you're not done yet? You see, falling doesn't take away your worth. It doesn't erase your story. It doesn't cancel the dreams you once held so tightly. You are not broken beyond repair. You are not defined by this moment. Because failure is not what ends glory. Giving up is, you may have fallen. You may be tired, bitter, hollow. But as long as there's breath in your lungs, you have the power to write a different ending. No one climbs without slipping. No one grows without struggle. No one becomes who they're meant to be without first meeting who they were at their lowest. So, if you're here now, on your knees, on the floor, in the dark, know this: you have not lost your light. It's just waiting for you to open your eyes again. So stand, even if you have to crawl first, even if your legs shake, even if your heart whispers, "I'm not sure I can do this again." Because rising isn't about proving anything to the world. It's about proving something to yourself. That you are more than your worst day. That you are stronger than your darkest thought. That your story isn't finished yet. You are not a failure. You are a fighter, a survivor, a builder of second chances. And every time you rise, even just a little, you reclaim a piece of your power, even if no one notices. So today, don't rise for applause. Don't rise to be perfect. Rise, because deep down, you still believe. You're meant to go further than this. If you've ever fallen, hard, painfully, silently, or if you're lying there right now, unsure how to move again, please know this: you are not alone. And this is not where your story ends. If something inside you still whispers, "I want to rise," even if it's just a whisper, leave a rebullious or in the comments. For the weight you're carrying, for the strength you're choosing. Sometimes, that tiny gesture is the first brave thing we do. And if this message met you in the middle of your fall, stay with us. Subscribe to USM, Soldier's Memory, where we don't tell perfect stories. We tell real ones. Stories of falling and rising again. Because that's where glory lives. And next time, I'll bring you another story about someone just like you, who chose to stand back up